the board meeting together and ready to go March 1st. 9:30, 9:34.
Yeah, you're running late.
Call to order. Start by the invocation. Debbie Caswick is going to say the invocation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Dear God, we gather together today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was a good invocation. Where did you get that?
Very good.
I'm hunting on the internet for these things.
Oh, I know, you're good.
Catherine D'Angelo. Here. Sid Blackwelder. Daryl Eichhoff.
Here.
Debbie Gasquick.
Here.
Wilbur James. Lily Jean Johnson.
Here.
Marvin Keene.
Here.
Joseph Lazara.
Here.
Rob Sheehan.
Here.
Bernard Silverman.
Here.
Ivory Wilson. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Very good. Okay, appears we have no visitors.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
That'll be a good thing. Wonder what Nick has to do with it.
We're not controversial enough.
Yeah.
No, wait until
Okay.
next week.
Any employee recognition today?
No, not today.
Okay.
I still think we should double our salaries.
Now we get some visitors here.
Yeah, sure get visitors.
Okay, the approval of the minutes, the only comment I have on that is the first page of the financial report should be 2017 instead of 2016.
We'll fix that.
Thank you.
Good to catch that. I didn't
see that one either.
What was that? Say that again?
Front page of the
Page
finance.
of the financial.
Over here it says.
March 2016
Oh,
instead of 2017.
oh.
And anybody else catch any?
I thought it was 2016.
Groundhog Day.
We're into
Okay.
March 2017.
In March, that's right.
Leave
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Happy March.
There being none,
March 1st.
we have a second on the
Plans
motion.
for Father.
Second. Okay,
Probably 120 also.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any negatives on that? Nay? Anybody? No? No negative? Okay. Any debate on the motion? There being none? Pass it on. Okay, and we have the approval of the minutes.
Holy Christmas.
Okay,
I so moved.
thank you. So,
Second?
second?
No, we just.
But we voted.
We did the minutes already.
We had,
You're approving next month's minutes.
We really approve these minutes.
I don't know. Paid attention.
We have nothing to report on service committee, but wasn't there a public hearing or
We had a SAG.
a SAG?
SAG meeting.
Are you gonna cover that in your?
It's not in there, so we could kind of talk about it right now. We didn't have the attendance that we were hoping for. We only had like 4 folks, 5 folks there. But it was a really good conversation. We got some good feedback on the app. I think we also toured the transit center and they were really excited about that.
Is that where you had the meeting down there?
Yeah, we had it down there at the city hall council room there. And then we're just gonna redouble our efforts on the secret shopper program. We're gonna do another round of those in March. And we're gonna get their help to recruit. So it was a good meeting. I just wish it was a little better attended.
Could we have a board meeting down there sometime?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm a little bit concerned about the logistics. I mean, we could do it at City Hall and then, you know,
Yeah.
but it's,
It's just too small.
It's
With
too
people-
small.
And people
It's too
walking
small.
in and out.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a little, it's not really conducive to it, I don't think.
We could just do it.
But,
We do 5 AM down there, then you people.
Yeah.
Is that,
yeah.
is that 14th still on? Because I had 2 appointments I had to cancel.
Yes, it is still on.
It's still
It's
on.
still on. 11:30.
11:30.
So March 14th.
March 14th, 11:30. And we'll do a customer appreciation afterwards. Should be a good time. And so, I guess the only thing on service and PAC is I think for March, agendas for the committees, we're gonna be going through policies and procedures. Those would be the big ticket items. There'll be a few other sundry items. So the next, is PAC and service scheduled for the 8th? Okay. So I just wanna make
Should already be
sure
on
that
everybody's
fits in your
calendar.
calendars and everything, a 9 and a 10 maybe, something like that. I'll be talking in the manager's report about what's coming down the pike on policies and procedures.
So PAC's on the 8th of March.
Yes, ma'am.
The 8th,
That should already
Is
be
there
on the
enough to have
calendar.
meetings on?
It's not for some.
Well,
It's a
I
rather
want you
dry
all to
topic.
see where procedures are going and things like that. So it will be, you know, you won't necessarily be approving, you know, there'll be a couple of policies I want you to approve. You'll see that there's a significant reduction in the number of policies. There's a lot that are in there from days of yore that I don't really think we need. And they're mostly related to following federal guidelines.
Okay.
You know, so there's stuff we have to do anyway, so it's not really something I need a policy on.
And how about the policy about the hurricane pay thing? Did you work on that one?
We have updates to the employee manual that relate to that, and we'll run those by you at the meeting.
I have a,
Give Trump another couple of weeks, all the federal guidelines will be gone.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll resend it.
yeah, it's not on my calendar.
I have the 15th.
I went in
for the service.
Do you?
Oh, really?
Well,
Yeah,
well,
that's what I have.
if that's the case, then that is fine.
That's what I have too.
I have it there as well.
Okay.
So it's 2 weeks, it's Wednesday the
It's 2
15th.
weeks. It's
And these are the
15th.
committees.
These are committees.
Oh, the 15th is the committee meeting, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then that following week we'll have finance, and that will be the policies. There's a few policies under finance that will, you know, I'll talk about it in the.
And then the March board meeting will be the last Wednesday.
Brian sent in a bunch of questions that he had. Are you gonna address those in the manager's report?
I am,
Okay, great.
which will now become affectionately known as the Silverman list.
Nice, I like that, that's a good ring to it, actually.
No, I like it, I like it.
Yeah, so I just sent you, Rob, and I think I sent to Joe, but.
But I'll go through it, because there's some updates to be had on those
Okay,
topics.
good, thank you.
So that's it for finance, or for service and PAC committees. Mr.
Okay.
Chair?
Bernie's just lonely since he's no longer chair. He's got-
No, I'm not, I'm not
And they're good
I keep a long
They
list.
they are good questions, and I
He
appreciate you
has a
giving me
little
it.
pad, he keeps it on.
I appreciate you
right there.
sending them to me yesterday rather
Yeah.
than bringing them up in the meeting.
It's not a trick, you know.
Yes,
Clearly, it's for your own good.
yes. It feels that way.
Father
Feels like
figure.
it's for my own.
Father figure.
Well, I'm the same age as
On the
Brian's
finance
father.
committee report, Marvin?
Yes, so thank you to everyone that
But I knew
attended
Bert
the
was
committee
your birthday
meeting.
or something.
It was a pretty good meeting, we had a lot of discussion, which I think you'll hear a little bit about. So, but we went over our January financials, just kind of give you a summary, and I'll let Brian do some of the details there. But just as a summary, we still have a few items that are a little out of budget, so we'll see that come up in our discussion of the budget revision, namely about 3 or 4 items that we just have to identify there. So again, we'll look at the details in a second. The audit update, I think, is what we spend most of our time on, and just kind of discussing where we were at. So again, we'll see the details.
Yeah, and I asked Dr. Sheehan and Dr. Keene to come in early, just so I had some board members who understood what was going on with the audit. Primarily because we basically need another month. It does have to be approved by the end of March, so, and in place, it's 6 months after the end of your fiscal year. And I see no problem getting to that point. I wrote my scathing email to him and told him basically how we felt, and got on the phone with him last Friday, and he I think understood where we were coming from and felt like there was a little bit of overreaction, and really the conversation went through essentially wordsmithing the findings. So I have a better understanding of what he's talking about. My biggest concern, more than anything else, was having a bunch of repeat findings in there. And I was able to convince him on we had draw issues in 15, and that was the central issue on cash management in the 15 audit. And this time around, it was really more about these tables in the back that are technically for informational purposes that go to the state on where our state money is going. And so this is a different problem. I understand the problem now, and we've got some things that we need to work through.
What about the fundamental issue of when you assign grant codes to expenses?
Well, and I think that
You might have to explain to the others what that was.
yeah, I can try to. And Ron, you're allowed to.
I can chime in.
You
on
can
this.
chime in as
Okay.
long as you don't get too far
I will
down the
not
weeds.
editorialize.
Here's the issue.
No verbs either.
You may remember in the FMO, we had this finding where we were not attaching grant, where we were getting the money to pay for individual invoices. So a $5.26 part is technically, the invoice for that part is technically supposed to have paid for by federal grant X.
Ideally, what
state
they would
grant.
like to see would be
Let
a
me-
separate general ledger segment that designates that grant.
Let me
So-
finish.
Okay.
Please. And so the finding is twofold. There's this grant issue, having the grant actually put on the invoice saying this is where we're getting the money to pay for this part. And then there's the general ledger side of it where you are coding it into where you're putting it in your budget ahead of time, so that there's a better, it's easier for the auditors to trace how that invoice was handled, okay? Ron and I jumped on the whole coding ahead of time with both feet. That was something that we had just implemented right before FMO got here. And so there were some things in years past where it wasn't happening, and that's where the finding came from. But they agreed with us that our procedure was solid and that we were doing that right. Where the rub is on the grant side, because the problem with putting the grant numbers on an individual invoice and being able to tell where the money's coming from for that invoice is because of our urban-rural split. For that $5.26 invoice, it's getting paid for out of up to 5 grants. Well, if you include locals, up to 7 grants, okay? And so we do all that at the end of the month when we close. We split our system between urban and rural at the end of the month in arrears. And the reason for that is because of the seasonal nature of our system, our urban-rural split changes from month to month. And it is dead accurate on how we're splitting the system between urban and rural. So the question is, and I actually raised this with FTA yesterday, the question is it okay to go back and put onto that invoice how it got paid for in arrears? Because FTA has essentially approved that cost allocation procedure. They've approved the procedure. They say it's solid, but it is inherently problematic when we're trying to put a grant on a particular invoice ahead of time. And so that is a question. One method that Ron and I have discussed is just listing the grants on every PO and check marks the ones that are gonna pay for this thing and not be silent on the mix. And we may do that.
What did FDA say when you
Well, classic FTA, let's get the consultants, the FMO reviewers involved to help. Because I said, look, I read that thing 80 times between its draft and its final, and I was focused on, and I think Ron was in the same boat, I was focused on the general ledger side. Because we did have that issue, we weren't following budgets as well as we should have. But the grant side was sort of lost on that because I knew that our cost allocation procedures had been approved. They said it's solid, and we have this inherent problem going back to an individual. So that's where we are in FMO. We're gonna have another discussion, and I'm gonna pin the consultants down and help me get a resolution to this.
So Brian, is
Yes,
it
sir.
possible to have a certain limit where that's required? Or do they want it on every single one?
Well, the rule is similar to that 3-day rule where we have to pay a vendor.
Right.
The rule is really for capital items.
Okay.
And the rule is set up for systems that aren't doing the split. Most systems are either rural or urban, one or the other, they're not both. And so the problem is with split ones. Now, I talked to PDRTA, they have a small urban and a rural program up there, and they aren't doing this. And they had the same FMO team, and they didn't make it a finding. So I'm like, what the hell? So it's a little bit frustrating from that perspective, and I told FTA, like, look, this is, you guys gotta tell me how to fix this, because I'm not changing my cost allocation plan. It's dead accurate, and there's no reason to change it. And plus, they've already said it works for our purposes,
So
so.
setting a $500 wouldn't make a difference, really?
So, yeah, go ahead.
So next year, when we get another audit, the annual audit, is there a way to fix it before that happens?
I think, we're gonna come to some sort of agreement with the consultants. I'm gonna get that in writing, and that should be plenty for the auditor. Where the auditor came in on this is if you think about an individual month's expenses, they're all grouped together under operating costs. We split it 62 federal, 62 urban, 38 rural, depending on that month's urban-rural split. And so everything is aggregated at the end of every month. And then it's aggregated again for your final financials in the annual thing. Well, we were developing these OPT schedules, these state schedules, by taking these aggregated amounts and then splitting them up into budget line items based on our costs for the year. All right, so it wasn't from an auditor's perspective, it was not traceable. I can't go to that $5.26 invoice and trace it through the system to see how I got paid for it. And that is inherently a problem for an auditor. And that's what we went round and round on. He kept telling me that the cost allocation plan wasn't working, or the procedure wasn't working. And I was like, no, that's a different issue. Our draws are straight. I mean, he tried to, this issue of this aggregation and fitting it into these tables, which honestly, the only people there's one person in the world that cares about it, and it's James Conyers at SCDOT. He's the only one. And I can't I can't convince, an auditor's like, it's part of this, it's part of the rules. So I get where he's coming from. But he was equating this issue of sort of jamming expenses into the OPT as a problem with our draws.
OPT is.
And Office of Public Transportation. So it's the schedules for the state office. And I was like, time out. That's not the problem. Our draws are solid. We just went through FMO, and they don't have any findings related to our draws. All right, so you can't tell me my draws are wrong. And and that was where he was getting the repeat finding, because we did have draw issues in 15.
Right.
So he capitulated on that eventually. It took about an hour and 30 minutes. And I said, if you want to give me a finding on these OPT schedules. That's fine. We'll do a workaround and do it differently next year. And he agreed with that. And I said, and that is not a repeat finding. That is a different cash management issue. It's not have anything to do with the draws. And he agreed. So that was a successful part of my conversation.
How about last year, we had an audit, and that was not a problem with that auditor, and how about PDRTA, they had an audit? And so it's up to the auditor to decide.
Yeah.
But this is a new auditor, he's not terribly well versed in transportation.
Well, he's got a
I thought he was.
He's got a few transit systems. They're not split. They don't have urban and rural split. So that was really the
Weren't
issue.
we told that he was
No,
on the ball.
we had our reasons for selecting him, and I think those
Yeah.
reasons still stand.
Yeah,
We just gotta kind of get over the hump here, and
well, he's gonna
You know,
understand where we're
thankfully-
coming from.
right, and thankfully, he's not making us go back and change anything. There's a few, you know, Ron and I are working on our representation letter and responding to the findings. He's asked us to wordsmith the finding, that first finding, the way we wanna do it, which I appreciate, so we'll tell him what's going on. And then we do have a fixed asset issue, and it relates to a couple of things. One, we had assets on the system that were no longer here. We had, he had some issues with how we did the impairment loss on the 2 internationals. And so we've got that, and so I don't think there's really any way around of that not being a repeat finding. But, you know, we're working on it. So we'll you know, I've got the lawyer involved on the international, so hopefully we get them out of here. And we've got a few things that we get taken care of before triennial, so that we don't have repeat findings on the triennial side, on the asset side. So we'll get those straight. But
I don't know which is more painful for the auditor, you sitting on him or Ron talking to him for an hour and 35 minutes. Either way, it sounds like you've got movement, and
yeah, we
you
did.
think you wouldn't, so
We
that's
did.
good.
You know, and you know, I told him, I was like, you know, I learned a long time ago, you can't discount what somebody feels. It's not like, you know, I'm not wrong. I feel the way I feel for a reason. And, you know, I'm a customer in this in this situation. You gotta listen to me.
You'd be a good husband.
So.
Are you interested?
Well, it might be. I don't get that on the other side of my family.
We have to, next
All
month,
family are
on
nuts,
the,
let me
on
tell you.
whatever the meeting is, the end of the month, we'll have to, sign a resolution accepting
He will be here at Finance
the,
Committee.
okay.
So you will have, so if you wanna talk to him, show up to that meeting.
And when is that meeting, the
and
21st?
That's when is that meeting?
I think it's Steve's.
So we have to accept the audit by the end of March.
Yeah.
And I honestly,
Yeah, we need to
you know,
figure that out.
the bottom line, and he made this abundantly clear, and he's right, he gave us an unmodified opinion.
Yeah.
So our books are good to go, and, you know, we have Ron to thank for that. I mean, he's done a great job since he's been here, so. 22nd.
Yes, finance
So-
committee, 22nd.
And remember, we're asking that the full board comes to that just to hear it. Now, are we good for 10 o'clock with him? Have we checked with schedules?
I don't have the 22nd on his calendar yet, but we will get that squared away by the end of the week,
Okay, perfect.
and make sure that he's gonna be ready. We also have a retirement, the pension plan presentation for employees at 11:30 that day, so if anybody wants to stick around and hear what the pension guy wants to say. Because there's some things afoot legislatively that could be a real budget buster for us, so we gotta listen.
I have the finance committee 10
I
a.m.
have it at 10 also.
10.
Yeah, that's what it is.
10 a.m.
I mean, it might change if
Right.
the auditor
10 to
changes.
11:30.
The auditor doesn't have that one yet, so we have to. Is
So,
that right?
right, so we should see a final draft of the audit sometime next week. I'll send it out to everybody, so you have plenty of time to look at it.
Okay.
You know, there's a couple of things that Ron and I will be working on this afternoon and tomorrow. You know, we got a few other sundry items that we want to get to the bottom of on that, but we got to get our stuff to him by Friday, and then, you know, Monday or Tuesday he should be back with the final, so it should be good. And we'll
Well,
go
good
from there.
job in your discussion and in your movement.
So, we'll see.
Good work, Ron. Very good.
Okay,
All right, so that was our audit update. FMO update, I think went pretty well, but Brian, if you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, FMO is basically done. We got through that process pretty well. I've sort of reopened this issue with, you know, that we just discussed about the grant numbers being on invoices ahead of time. And so hopefully we'll just get some resolution on that. I told him yesterday, that I want some help on how to resolve it. I don't want them to tell me it's just a finding. I want them to recommend a solution.
Not a bad idea to put all the grant numbers on your invoice.
Yeah, just check the ones that we know, you know, because then you wouldn't check like SMTF, the state money, we spend that down really early in the process. So you just wouldn't check that box after a certain
You could get a
period.
stamp. You know, a big-
Yeah, so we'll, I think there are some options out there without, you know, totally redoing our procedures again.
Very good. Are there best practices around from other agencies that have the same situation?
You know, it's like, it's classic FTA. You set your procedures and then follow it. They don't really dictate that kind of stuff, which can be really frustrating at times, you know.
I think
And then if you don't keep checking on them, they change those procedures and you don't know.
the whole problem is urban-rural split. So if we were to try to pre-code this stuff, it'd just be an estimate anyways.
Right, right.
What we're doing, like Brian says, is highly accurate. It's right on. But if we switch, then we're either gonna have to have some predetermined split that we use for a while and then readjust it, or, you know,
It's gonna
something to that
require a
effect. So
retroactive
the
adjustment.
Yeah, I
which we
mean,
wanna
or
get away
either
from.
a retroactively
That's
adjustment
what
or
you
adjust
gotta
it
do,
going
adjustment
forward. But either way, the numbers aren't anywhere near as solid doing what they're suggesting, and that's the irony of it, you know,
Right.
so like Brian says, if we say, okay, you guys win, how would you do it? I don't know what they can come back with, because it's all, what they're suggesting is almost a catch-22 in
Right.
theory. So, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
And verbally, the consultant has, you know, basically said he didn't think there was any issue with doing it in arrears. It's just as long as it's, you know, we put some sort of letter to file or something in the file with a particular purchase order that, you know, basically says where the money came from. I mean, the only other option would be to isolate the two systems, which you know, we don't want that. You know, we don't want to set aside 5 vehicles for the rural system, because, you know, that just creates operational issues.
Plus the clerical effort. Some of these suggestions, we couldn't financially support the clerical staff we would need to do this. It just doesn't operationally make any sense.
Well, how about if we write a policy that says that this is the way we're doing it? You know,
I think that needs to be done, I agree, and that is on the list. You're right.
That's in process.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't be a policy, it'll be a procedure. But yeah.
And that would help strengthen our position with
Right,
the auditors.
and well, we'll follow the policy, and if the policy is approved by FDA.
Mhm.
But you know, this is really why we hired you, among other reasons. I mean, you're able to get into the weeds and sort of untangle this, and, you know, I don't think we had that level of expertise in previous, you know, GMs. So
Well, and
I'm pleased you're handling it.
I'm learning a lot.
I thought we hired him because he's so cute.
That's what I thought.
That's good.
That's what I did.
That's just icing on the cake.
Always blushing.
Girl Scout cookies.
All right, well, let's change the subject before we So,
Next item.
So there were about 3, as I said, items that we need to look at for our budget revision. A little bit on salaries, particularly transit salaries. Maintenance, we've seen the vehicle maintenance pop up for a few months, and then a little bit on some supplies. So I'll let Brian talk details.
Yeah, well, and I think this slide is sort of, this is really a repeat of the conversation we had at finance. I've not gotten through my spreadsheet to kind of, I know how much we need to change the budget. It's in the neighborhood of about $226,000 increase in the budget. We have the money. I just got to rearrange the deck chairs to kind of show how we're doing it. And I have one more variable that I got to get a handle on, and that is the other half of my conversation with FTA was about our indirect cost rate. And this is even more complicated, I think, than the discussion about the invoices and how we're coding them, but I'll try. Our provisional indirect cost rate, basically overhead rate, is we multiply all of our labor costs by department by 32.15%, which is essentially a way to generate a admin cost. That has been under review now since way before the FMO, so it's been about 8 months that they've been sitting on it. I'm not sure exactly why it's taken so long. I think in retrospect, I'm glad it's taken this long because we're not having to deal with this issue as part of the audit. And I can explain that. But the bottom line is they are asking us to essentially resubmit our indirect cost rate calculations that don't include a couple of the payouts that we did to departing employees when I first got here. This is all FY15 numbers. And they're saying that only 20% of my time is basically billable. And it has to do with the GM, CEO split. You know, we could deal with splits all the time. Maybe we'll have like a banana split day, some splits. But
GM is covered and CEO is not.
well, in theory. And I wonder what would have happened if I was just the GM. I mean, it bugs the crap out of me, the title
I think
issue.
we can change that.
We could, but I don't think it's gonna matter at this point. They've been,
At one time,
they've
it
been
was just
through-
the GM.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think during Myers' thing, he changed or something, because I know we didn't vote on it.
it doesn't really matter, I don't think. I mean, I think there are things that I do, going to county meetings to talk funding, you know, any sort of lobbying type of efforts. All of that is not billable, it's not reimbursable. So the problem is that we don't have the timesheets to show what percentage of my time is spent doing non-billable stuff versus billable stuff, which they, you know, they said, you know, just knowing what they know about our operation, that I'm highly involved in the operation and what's going on internally to the building. So, but they said, you know, my choices were, because I have no documentation, my choices were 0 or 20%. And so what we have to do is we have
0
to,
or 20% of your salary going into the indirect rate.
going into the indirect rate. So that has a critical budget revision impact, because there now is over 100,000 in local funds that I gotta make sure we have. So the conversation yesterday with the FTA was, okay guys, look, I don't believe that my percentage is that low. I think I have a much higher percentage. You asked me to basically resubmit this so that it draws back to, like, the reduction in overhead rate was not that big. It was like 4%, between 4 and 5% percentage points. So it went down to like 28%. The problem is that number is based on FY15 experience, which is only a month and a half of me. All right, so we got a big problem in a 15-month year. You know, it's
a lot bigger.
so it's a lot bigger. And I said, so look, you know, we've had turnover. We've got, you know, we feel like we've got our administrative org chart filled out, and you know, FY16 is, you know, a much better set of numbers to use. Does it make sense for us to go ahead and recompute everything? And we could do that. The issue is that when you have an approved rate, you have to do this exercise at the end of a fiscal year where you are adjusting for the next year. You're adjusting that rate based on what your actual admin costs were, what the 32% generated in FY16, what the 28% would amount to. There's all sorts of variables in that particular calculation. I got Mike Levitan working on it as we speak. And they basically told me, it's like, Brian, tell us what's gonna work best for you, and then we'll try to work out a path, which was a good answer to have. The question will be whether or not I can go in arrears and take the last 5 months, let's say, look at my calendar and kind of make an assessment of what I did that was billable and what I did that wasn't billable. And if we're able to do that, then we might be able to swing a new rate. And then we just figure out, you know, when we're gonna stop and do these calculations, whether it's at the end of FY16 or at the end of FY17.
Well, it's really a big advantage for us to have a bigger number for your budget
Right,
management.
right.
No doubt, and I don't, you know, I think that number is almost reversed. I think it's 80%
Yeah,
opposite.
that's what I think.
That's what it should be.
But I will tell you that if we do something in arrears, I got all these days where 5 days that there's no meeting, you know, or anything like that. It's gonna be tough for me to tell what I did that day. So it's a weak method
But
for,
if you can pull out the meetings that are not billable, the balance would then be billable. 5 days where you have no meeting would be 5 days where you were working
That's, yeah, doing
in administration. It would.
you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of the grant work, I do, you know, I'm working on budget, you know, there's a lot of things that are.
Meet with us.
Yeah, and you know, I also have to educate myself on, you know, what activities are not billable, and there's nothing in the regs that says this is what a CEO does, and this is what a GM does, or, you know, anything like that, you just kind of have to interpret it, and so I don't know that they're going to, let me do anything in arrears. So maybe we live with the 28.8. I think if we're gonna do that, you know, I gotta make sure that we have a local match for FY17 squared away. We're certainly not interested in reopening the books in 16. So we're gonna do whatever the math is on the deltas between what we should have drawn and what we did draw and what we should have drawn. What our costs were, what we drew, and what we should have drew. And sort of move forward on that.
And the underdraw on one side kind of offsets the 80-20 thing on Brian, so there'll be some net in there where it's not quite as painful as what, you know, it sounds, but it will involve crunching some numbers.
Yeah, I mean, we could, you know, especially on the rural side where we're overmatching everything, I think we're already paying for it a local match anyway. So it's not, I don't think it's, you know, a death knell by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something we gotta get the math behind.
Yeah,
It's
because
just taking some time.
we think we're significantly underdrawn on the admin side. Our expenses are much higher than what we were allowed to draw based on the 32.15% calculation. So we're hoping that number should be a little bit higher, and you could add it to the subsequent year.
Right.
And we're gonna have to so what we gain there, we'll lose in, you know, the 80-20 rule on Brian. So if we can get his percentage ironed out, you know, hopefully the thing will net out close to zero. So, you know, it's just an algebraic gymnastics until we get to that point.
But if you need to change your calendar, you need to know what the basis for the new calendaring system should be, and you need to get on with it and do it, actually.
Well, we're gonna change my timesheet. So we're gonna have a manual timesheet. Yeah, we'll figure something out, so. So, and then, you know, we use the next 3 months to figure out what that percentage is, and the question will be, how long are they gonna let us slide with the provisional rate, and it's just more complicated than it has to be. So that is the holdup on a new revision. I hope to have at least some estimates on where we're at on that, so that I can give you guys a draft budget revision. These are some other variables as it relates to the budget. You know, we have this increase in operating and maintenance. Will require a small modification to our federal grant, 5307 grant. And I mentioned the indirect cost rate.
Slide change.
I'm gonna add some money to legal because I'm using them for the internationals. Did you do that?
Yes, I did, I'm sorry. I'll take it.
We did get word that SCDOT is awarding an additional $420,000 in SMTF money, primarily for capital, but that is gonna be our saving grace on any issues we have with needing additional match. Because I can match that to some vehicle.
SMTF should say is the
State Mass Transportation Funds. I give everybody a glossary of all of our things, if I need to do that. But so
They have one.
I mean, we already had the 4 buses. We already had the 4 buses in the budget. But this seals the deal for doing additional 2 24 passenger cutaways, the longer cutaways that are pretty helpful, especially in the off season. You know, when we want to put something out there that doesn't need as much space on it. And we'll do one more 5310 vehicle, so we can complete the replacement of paratransit fleet. So we'll have replaced 6 in the last 18 months, and that will leave 2 to replace next year, those 2 that we got off of state surplus, which are running great. So those are what I'm working with on the budget revision, and I'm 40% through that process, so we'll have something for finance committee. It'll be a busy busy month, I think, for you guys.
Yes, one more budget question.
Yes, sir.
And this is often in the future when you start making your FY18 budget. But how are our drivers, and I know we've had a lot of new expenses with salaries, but how are our drivers and customer service reps, are they getting raises? Have they gotten a raise lately? Do they need a
We
raise?
have another one planned for July 1st.
Oh, yeah.
So
I
another
got
one.
one in January, didn't I?
July.
No,
No, they
it
have
was
one
last July.
July.
So
Every
there'll be
July.
another annual bump, and that's worked into the budget.
Yeah.
Good.
And how much are they, what's the top salary up there?
We have a couple that are in 16 range.
They're supervisors?
No, those are lead drivers.
Drivers,
Supervisors are 18 to 20.
okay. It's good.
So in our lowest, we bumped up the starting amount. I think it was $12, we bumped it up to $12.63.
Consider 17 years ago it was $6.50. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no, we're gonna, I think.
Even when I
we're doing
started
pretty
here,
well.
like in 2008, it was like 12.
Yeah.
Well, most importantly, we're not losing drivers for
It's a better place to
for the
work,
school
so.
district or something like
So,
that.
yeah, I mean, I think, although the school system did call us and ask us for what our rates were, so they may be
Well, they-
adjusting, so.
I was talking to my wife, because she's an administrator, and
Right.
she's saying that they're having a hell of a time keeping drivers in the school system.
It's harder over there because they don't have full-time work for everybody.
Yeah,
And it's a split shift every day.
yeah.
And so that's harder to keep folks. You know,
Yes.
we've been able to really minimize split shifts, which are tough, especially in paratransit.
You know, the district, their $500,000 investment in cameras, do we have any similar issues that we need camera?
Well, I've actually, you know, one of the reasons why we're kind of over budget on some of these things is we've purchased some, because we've had, you know, a couple of these incidents
Yeah.
where he didn't have any film. And so we bought 3 more Xeon camera groupings to upgrade all of our Angel Track systems.
And have they been
To see.
installed?
They're, not all of them, they're in the process, so. But yeah, we've been making some purchases in that realm, so that we stop having this issue of not having.
Well, it just makes so much more sense. I mean, it's a lot safer for, you know, the driver at least knows everything is being recorded
Yeah.
going back.
So let's see, there's one in the rear that points forward, there's one in the forward that points to the rear, there's one that points out to the front of the bus, and I mean, there might be one that goes towards the rear and the out exterior. The new buses have a 5th camera that is on the side of the bus pointing towards the doors. So that kind of juts out and it's pretty nifty.
You know, if you think of the school bus drivers, I had a friend who was, worked for the school system, and when he was finished driving in the morning, and he started, I knew these kindergartners were being picked up at 6:30 in the
Jesus.
morning, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, he would, after that, because he was a college graduate anyway, he went in and he took attendance. You know, they had him working all day long, but he was a college graduate.
Well, and there are a lot of those that are in that, you know, they
Yeah.
do other jobs while they're not driving. So
Yeah.
that, they do have a lot of that. I
Yeah.
think,
But
you know,
you
it's like
think-
any fringe thing. I mean, you
But
got 90% of your people are happy, it's the 10% that you're trying to infill
You
all
know,
the
but
time.
he finally left because he couldn't stand the kids screaming and carrying on and everything. You know, when you're driving one of our buses, you don't have people screaming, you may have them falling asleep.
I don't know about
Depends on the route.
Most people
Yeah,
on our
plenty of
buses
issues.
are on a device or sleeping.
Yeah, see?
You don't even hear people talking on cell phones hardly anymore. It's a quick
They're
conversation.
texting. We're just gonna eliminate all oral communication. Just sit there and think your conversation with
Well, I
somebody.
know it goes on in my house like that.
Contemplate.
I only hear from them when it's dinner time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
So
So,
Brian,
Your best man
the
talking.
cameras, in-house installation.
Yes,
And I like it
that's,
that way.
IT that does that, so. And we've worked in some new procedures on checking them more frequently. Because really, unless the cameras have these ring lights around the lens so that you can see at night, basically. And that's the only way you can tell if they're on or not. if the lights are on. So we've incorporated a procedure where they're checking them kind of weekly, each set weekly to make sure they're operating properly, the hard drive is engaged and all that stuff. So and that was really in response to having a number of incidents where we didn't have film. And there's nothing worse than, lawyer wants to film and we can't.
We just worried about it.
Especially when we're purporting that we have it.
Yeah.
Are there cameras out here? I mean,
Oh yeah, they're all over.
Is it really called film anymore, or is it just digital?
Video.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
And do we take a
I'm
picture
older than I am.
when they're parked at night?
There's cameras on the building that show what's going on. It's a little grainy at night, but. And they have audio too, so we had audio for that most recent incident, so hopefully that will help the legal folks. So that's it on budget revision.
Any questions on that?
Coming soon to a theater near you.
Good.
I heard there's about 226,000 is what you said was aggregate or whatever.
Roughly, yeah.
And I think the lion's share is probably the vehicle maintenance, is that right?
Vehicle maintenance is 85,000. I'm putting 20,000 in there as a little bit of slush for fuel. I'm adding 12,000 to legal because I'm getting some help from them on impairment loss vehicles. I have 12,000 for office supplies, equipment. We bought new chairs for CSR. We bought a bunch of furniture over at the transit center, and it's just those are items we don't want to capitalize. So we it's just where we put them. So we're going to budget for them there. There will be we'll be able to reduce the capital side of the transit center. So that's a wash. And then I have 4262 in ops, and that is primarily how we've rearranged supervision and customer service with the new facility. We're really expecting to see some nice improvements in on-time performance as a result of having a vehicle staged out there. We might see a small increase in deadhead percentage because we are deadheading a bus out there so that we have it out there.
They're meaning
To the new transit center in Myrtle Beach.
Will it come home at night?
It comes home at night. So there's 2 extra trips, and there's an extra 30 miles in deadhead miles every day. But it's something that we need to do, and it will have a good operational impact. And then there's 27,000 in maintenance salaries and benefits, and that is mostly that's 9,500 of that is paying down vacation, the exorbitant vacation balances. And the rest is we switched one of the hustlers. We had a part-time hustler who's no longer with us. We hired someone in that place, and they're going full-time. And they're kind of going back and forth between vehicles and the building.
Right back on the vacation buy down, support everything you've done for last year and now. How do we, procedure place that we don't get that pickle again, we make people take, so once we get it down where you want it, they're.
In our most recent edit of the employee manual, there are now limits. You stop accruing on January 1 if you've exceeded a certain limit.
Good.
So that's it. There's your itemized list of stuff on the budget. And the vast majority of that, there are federal funds available, so we're really only talking about the additional match for those things, so it's not a huge hit.
And that's it for finance. Unless you have anything.
All right, thank you.
Very good.
Are
Very good, Marvin.
the roads affected by the marathon this week?
Modestly. Most of that's early in the morning, so like a lot of it doesn't happen before Route 10 even hits the street, and that's the route that is affected the most.
I just haven't seen anything on Facebook or anything that says they're anticipate these changes.
Yeah, no, we'll put a notice out there. I mean, that's next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend. And so we'll put a notice out there.
Was
Some
changes.
Just some roads.
I
Is
think
it
the
this
marathon
weekend?
is this weekend.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Well, I'll have to check with Erica. Michelle's at Apton. I think she's traveling back today. So we'll get her on that.
What happened? She goes with
She went to she's on a couple of national committees. And so she was down there, they had some committee meetings, it's in Tampa, so it's the APTA Marketing Conference.
Yeah, great.
That's where Michelle was,
There you go.
So,
Just for one day though.
are we up to the general manager's report?
Yep.
I have 5 slides. I'm gonna go over Silverman list. Give you a little bit of update on the status of local funding requests. And I'm making fun of you, but it's, I totally appreciate it.
Yeah. It's for your home good.
I hope that you get that.
We're laughing with you, not at you.
Short fleet
I
update,
sent one on the list yesterday. So
and then I'll give you a sneak peek on policies and procedures. First of all, the Silverman list. Bus stop designation program, we got 2 proposals, which is a little bit problematic, but we think we've gotten past that. We were hoping for 3. The 2 proposals are, I'm not sure the name of one of them, but it is a DBE prime. It'll be interesting to see, they have some good folks on their team. We're interested to see how their approach to the project will go. And then the other proposer is AECom.
And what does prime mean?
They are the lead consultant for
They
the
don't have
project.
subcontractors.
So, you know, the way we sort of had that project kind of scoped, I guess for lack of a better term, is, you know, there's a bunch of planning pieces of that, getting those procedures for siting bus stops, all that stuff, getting the geocoding and having a GIS database of these locations, that sort of thing. Well, on one team, that role is being provided by a sub, and on the AECom team is provided by AECom, the prime. They have, I'm not sure how they are calculating this, but they've suggested that in their team, they're about 50% is going to DVD for that. I know that the review team is, we had to work with the state on making sure that they were okay with only having 2 proposers, because typically you want more than 2. We've gotten past that, so there was a little delay associated with that, but we should be making a decision on it in the next week and a half or so. I still see, 10 bus stops getting out there by June 1st.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, they might be on, a couple of them might be on shelters, places where we know we can put them. But it's just gonna be good, to kind of picking our spots and getting some actual signs out there.
Will there be some routes that at the end of the day do not have fixed stops, or every route will have?
Every route will have fixed stops. Now, there might be some rural routes where you still might stop between them.
The rural is the kind of the one where I'm wondering about, where somebody's walking down the road and they're standing there.
To me, that's where you need them the most. They're farther apart,
Yeah.
but, you get out there in the morning before the sun comes up and you have a nice,
Just-
bright stop sign, that they can stand by. So I think that's definitely squared away. Stop enunciation has been something that has fallen to the wayside. We have 2 issues. One, getting the transit center set up has really taken a big cut out of IT's time in general. And 2, we have not gotten a sound system from the consultant or from the provider that we feel works. So they're in a little bit
Provider of the.
of the ABL and the app. It's the same provider. And so I don't really have some timing on that yet, but it is something that needs to be in place before we get to triennial. Because we will have a finding on ADA for not announcing stops.
Why haven't we had findings right along? Do we say that our drivers do it?
That's a good question, I don't know. We should have, because they're not.
Right. Some are and sometimes.
The drivers verbally announcing them.
Sometimes,
Sometimes, it's not every time though,
yeah.
and it's not every stop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the major
The major
stops.
stops they do, Coastal Grand Mall, Howard Hospital.
It's hard, they got a lot going on.
Yeah.
So automating that process is a good thing and will help us with our ADA.
Does the ABL provider have an alternative sound system?
They're working on it. We're getting speaker systems put into the new buses. So I think the issue is gonna be providing us with speakers that can be mounted in the back, so that the whole bus can hear what's going on. But I you know, it's something that has to be done before triennial gets here in May.
Yeah.
So, you know, next couple months, we should start seeing those getting out there.
We didn't have a finding for that last triennial, did we? Remember that?
I don't think so. I don't remember what the, I mean, there was a bigger finding that we needed a better ADA plan. So it may have been part of that finding. Neighbor to Neighbor New Horizons. The New Horizons portion of that 5310 grant has been killed. They have decided that
Did
it's
you say killed?
killed. Yeah, that's dead, DOA, or however you want to
They
put
killed it, or
it.
did you
They
say-
killed it. They killed it. It's one of those things where I explained how it was going to work twice and had her convinced, but she could not translate that to her board. I'm talking about Kathy Jenkins over there at New Horizons, and it was really kind of interesting. The problem she had is that it was too much money for not enough of her clients. And I get that, but the money part was really just the local match, which was $21,000 for 2 years of service. And she doesn't get the $136,000 from the feds, you know, without doing a program. And so it was sort of lost on her. We are gonna augment the neighbor to neighbor side of it and try to pick off some more senior trips. The rest is going back in the hopper. And we'll be doing another, we just got a call for projects yesterday for the next round, so I'm gonna go after another vehicle
From GSAT?
from GSATs and then work with neighbor to neighbor on that side of the
I
house.
guess, I was in Columbia yesterday, I got kicked off the grant review process since our proposal is one of the ones that's probably gonna be funded, so I'm optimistic.
So there's some local match for Joe to work with. So Joe and I have been talking, and I still feel like we'll have, you know, a good mass of trips that we can sort of augment what's going on paratransit. It's just taking a little bit longer.
And it was neighbor to neighbor that was gonna get the mobility manager?
Yes, no, he lost an individual, person who left, and so he's replaced that person. He's got one more person to hire. But this new person is working out really well and has sort of started this data collection for transportation providers. And I told him I was on board as long as the end product is going regional with this thing. It can't just be for seniors and just for neighbor to neighbor clientele, so to speak. And he's agreed. So I said, look, you know, we'll help you any way we can, but this has got to be a means to a more regionally focused transportation mobility manager. And he can house it for as long as he's able to house it, you know,
Right.
being in a nonprofit. And so that's the goal, and he and I will coordinate on another 5310 grant to kind of move that forward. You asked about service changes for October, and I will say that given my conversations with funders, that I don't see any changes
I don't see any.
happening in October.
I think we got a good schedule.
I don't think that precludes us from making some improvements in April, depending on how the conversation goes in July. This, you know, improvements for next April, depending on how this year's budget discussion goes. I mean, right now, I think we're getting a little bit extra from Myrtle Beach, so we might play around with some service in Myrtle Beach if he wants to get to some other neighborhoods or up Bristol Parkway, or, you know, some of these areas that we don't serve, then we might try to do that, depending on how that goes. And it may
Which more
make
are you
sense. I'm sorry?
How much more are you getting from Myrtle?
Well, we asked for 375, and we got 330 last year, plus the 18 for the transit center, so it's a little bump. And, you know, we got a lot.
Have they indicated they'll give us the 375?
He's working on it. I think that's what he's gonna ask council for. So, the conversation with the county, I mean, it's a good segue into the next slide. So let me finish the continuity plan, and we'll talk about funding requests. You asked about business community continuity plan in the context of whether or not you were wondering if the board ought to step into?
Well, we talked about it last October, and my plan, what I talked about was a plan that we need for an emergency.
A succession.
You're out for a month, or Ron's gone, or, I think that, the reason that I got started on it was when I talked to McGregor, who was our former auditor, and I had a conversation with him one time before one of the audits, and, you know, he told me that this is one of the jobs of the board that you're not doing, you know, that you as a board aren't doing. And that's what got me started on it. And, you know, our job is to keep close going. You know, and I think that might be part of our job. I don't know. I don't know where to begin. I don't know how in-depth it has to be. I don't know anything about it. I'm not a corporate person, but
Yeah.
I just think that if our job is to move, you know, these 500,000 people a year, we better be ready for anything.
Well, business continuity, which is, you know, maintaining operations in the event of some sort of disaster or natural disaster or, you know, whatever it might be, is part of the federally required safety plan, which are due December of 18, I think. I'd like to try to do it by December of 17. And in that safety plan, not only do you talk about business continuity, but you do talk about succession planning, which is, you know, that's the staff related, you know, you get a vacancy that you weren't planning on, those types of things.
So this is a board, it would be the board's job to come up with this continuity.
Well, I think it's one that you all have to
I think the board has to ask for it, but we don't do it.
Yeah, I think it's still me that has to do it. And it's something that you all will endorse. You will pass a resolution to say, this makes sense. And honestly, it's gonna be an iterative process. I know the first draft of that thing is not gonna have everything in it.
Well, what do you need to present, say, a first draft by December 17th?
Some time. More
I
than
don't
anything
think you
else.
need that, we can give you.
I don't know. I mean, I've got, like HTC, that's a good one. I think we wanna try to ask some other transit authorities, you know, what it looks like, just to kind of get a frame of reference. And then once we have that frame of reference, then I'll have a better idea of what I need from y'all.
I know the university has developed a continuity plan, and now that they're running their own bus system, it may be that there's a complete plan that they've actually put together for that unit.
Yeah, see, and you're right. I mean, there's a system that rolls into a bigger entity's plan. So there might be some things. I mean, you know, you think about it. I mean, some of these natural disasters, we're on the hook to operate. You know, to do evacuation and those types of things. So,
Well, let me ask you this.
you know.
When should I ask you about it again? 90 days, I mean, what did you say is what I'll do?
No, because we're gonna need to see some drafts before December.
Right.
And I got
July 1st, I'm gonna ask you.
Well, you're gonna have to identify some folks responsible for
yeah,
that,
we gotta
too.
get some help.
Personnel accountable in the agency.
Is it something that we would contract?
You know, I think where we can get a lot of guidance on it will be during triennial. So ask me about it in May.
May what?
This May.
15, no, May.
May Finance Committee,
But there's an
Okay,
IT
I
portion.
have,
because that's later in May than Service
I
Committee.
mean, I'm not really pushing, and I know that you're pushing, I get you, but,
I have something to add to this list. How far are we with this time clock situation? I know you
Who
went-
who set you up to ask that?
no one. Well, I do have a
So
brain, I know I'm an
another-
old person.
No, that's not what I meant.
The answer is.
Well,
The
I
answer is we
I
are
read that
throwing
you went
the,
out to, you weren't gonna have it done.
They've blown it.
yes, we killed the whole project. We're throwing the time clocks in the trash.
Okay,
And we're gonna go to,
Can we sell them?
we're gonna go to, hopefully, I don't have
They're
any
gonna go
information
to a
on that.
vendor assistance
We're
solution.
gonna go to a payroll provider.
Okay.
And so we're gonna put out an RFP in the street, hopefully get five,
3 to 5.
3 to 5 proposals.
Probably 3.
And then we're gonna
I think only
interview them
3.
and get, you know, a good understanding of their bells and whistles, and how we're doing timesheets for both admin side as well as drivers. Drivers need, you know, like a computer monitor where they put in their employee number and time and what they're working on, driving or route or whatever. Whereas, you know, like for me, I need to be able to bill my time based on billability, you know, and what type of thing
But
it
how
is.
does this work for us? Do they come in and do this, or do we
They come
provide
in,
the information?
Well, a lot of them are web-based now.
Uh-huh.
So we just have a website that we go to and we put in our time, and they do all the calculations for us. They do all of the taxes, they do, you know, they automate the whole process of paying family court and, you know, where people have garnishments.
Oh,
all that
that'll save a
stuff
lot-
is
that'll
soup
save
to
a lot
nuts.
of time for our employees.
And so
There
as,
you go.
as much as I wanna put as much on Ron as possible, he's convinced me that this is something that we should do.
Yeah.
And we're talking about you know, an annual outlay of anywhere from 15 to 20,000 to do it.
Well, many organizations, even smaller than us, have that.
Yeah.
Now,
Sounds like we might
companies
save a
like
lot.
that, or is that?
Yeah, ADP, Paychex, Cerulean.
The Ceridian, yeah.
Ceridian.
We don't really want to go with local. We want a national provider because the customer service is excellent. You usually have a dedicated rep, and if that person is not available, they'll immediately transfer you to somebody else.
I think it's, I wanna say it's Paychex offers discounts to chamber members.
Oh, okay.
So
I think the logical choices are Paychex, ADP, and possibly Ceridian. I like those 3 outfits, and they're, you know, national
Well, what kind
outfits.
of money are we talking about?
20,000.
15 to 20,000.
Yeah.
20,000 a year or less?
I think we
Oh,
might
well,
even, we
that-
might spend
that's,
that much on Ron and other people's
That's
salaries.
Well, that's what I was
Well,
wondering.
yeah, man, there's
How much
plenty of
our-
other things for them to do rather
Yeah,
than.
that's right, that's
Is there
right. Then
someone
you don't
whose
have to
job is
hire
eliminated?
you won't have to hire another employee to do.
No, but what it may do, and I've just been thinking about it, on the operating side, is we'll have pods of drivers whose timesheets will be approved by a certain supervisor. All that is done online, so the supervisor can go in and say, you know what, this isn't right, we need to go back and change it. And so that we're getting a timesheet that is stamped, approved by the employee, by the supervisor, and we work in some of those procedures that we were having trouble with.
So if we have any requests from FTA or state about doing something wrong, we can say,
Yes.
The other thing that these services will provide that we're not staffed up for is any federal changes to payroll regulations. For instance, the overtime issue with minimally paid supervisory employees, all that stuff, they automatically incorporate it into
Right.
updates to their software. It just takes the headache and takes the risk off the, you know, authority to not have to worry
Yeah,
about
you don't
those
need to be
types
an
of things.
expert on tax.
Right,
Absolutely. I mean, it's a specialization of labor type of thing. They do this all the time, and,
Right.
you know, it's just a peace of mind type of thing. Plus, they prepare all the payroll taxes, they issue the W-2s, they review the information, yeah, it's good. Then boom, they just mail them all out to the employees, or
Oh,
email them
my.
out to the employees.
That's a big savings.
As of the last payroll of the
Like
year,
that money.
you know, the employees will get their W-2s right around the first week of January. It just alleviates a lot of, you know, unnecessary research and risk on our part.
What's the time frame then?
We just gotta get the
As soon as
RFP
possible.
put together, yeah, I would.
So we'll put the RFP out in March and get this hopefully rolling so that they're up and running, hopefully maybe
There's-
July 1st.
Yeah, one thing I
I don't
don't
think
know.
it'll take too long to get somebody on board.
No,
Get it done.
they have teams that run around the country that do presentations, but we gotta do the RFP first. We can't, you know, bring them in first and then put out the RFPs, so, we do need to move
We
on.
have done
to-
that.
I'm not feeling terribly critical, but what's gonna come out of my mouth next probably will sound that way. I think where this agency falls down is in project management. in identifying this is something that's gonna be done, this is the timeline, and then, 6 months later, somebody says, whatever happened to that? And it sort of comes out there. So it would be nice if we could track.
Working on setting expectations.
Yeah, well, expectations, but also setting accountability. So it goes all the way back to the shelters, and you can name 4 or 5 or 6 projects that we don't really know what the real
Right.
timeline is that we're operating on. The AVL kind of got started, and even now we're still sort of finding out about a piece of the AVL that we thought, the enunciation system that we thought was
I
sort of
think we talked about
a
it
guarantee. So almost like a whiteboard with these projects and deliverables and timelines and such is, I think it's necessary. I don't want to add on a whole lot. If Bernie or Kitty didn't think to ask this, we would go another month and not know some of these things. So again, I'm not overly critical because I know you guys have a whole lot on your plate and it's a small agency, but project tracking, which in your consultant life, I'm sure, was just routine. You had Gantt systems or whatever it was that you routinely used. That's what I'm feeling like is missing, or it occasionally sort of goes down off our radar screen.
Yep.
Well, we
I
have
could
so
com-
many projects.
Yeah.
Well, and I could envision sort of doing like a dashboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a note of optimism here is we've been learning, but we've been living in the past by necessity. That, I sense this is coming to a conclusion with the triennial. That will free up the sort of time to do what you're suggesting on a more professional basis. I mean, we've just been reacting to what we've found so far and putting in the measures we need to just to continue to operate.
Yeah.
I think we've appeased most of the teams of auditors that have come through here that our plans are solid, but the problem is we just need to be unleashed. And we're almost there. I think triennial's that. So
Yeah,
I
really, the
feel a
only
lot
thing on
better about
triennial
it.
that has to happen is getting these policies and procedures straight. Everything else, we're good.
Yeah.
Good to go.
I agree with you, Rob, and that's really the reason I keep all these notes and things. And my fear is, and I say to Brian, I'm doing it for your own good, I'm serious because I saw what happened with other people. I saw that things were stated and said and never happened, or didn't happen for a long time, and then somebody would say, well, I thought you said, and
And nobody asked.
well, it looked bad,
Even
it
if
looked bad
we
for
did
us.
ask, we got answers that satisfied the board.
Well, it's all part of continuity planning too. If we don't have a real clear idea, if you haven't clearly articulated each of these projects in detail, and, heaven forbid something happens, we all just look, feel like we haven't done our job.
Will we eliminate people?
With the ADP thing, no. I think it just frees staff up to do other things that need to be done, so,
Possibly through attrition or retirement down the road, but I don't think we can take any immediate action. We're gonna have to, learn the system, and like Brian says, there's other stuff that we're not doing that we need to do that, fill in
yeah, man,
the gaps.
I think, not having to do payroll every 2 weeks frees Ron up to help me more on my budget.
Plus
things
you
like
won't
that.
have to
So
hire
there's-
another
there's plenty.
finance person that you have to pay.
Right.
You have to pay insurance and this and that and the other thing, and which will run more than the 20,000,
Right,
much more.
so,
Yeah. And the other thing about it, what's nice about it, without beating it to death, is it's good for succession. If the payroll person was to leave or I was to leave, there are, most accountants out there are familiar with either ADP or paychecks out there, so we wouldn't have the same training problems that we would have with this Sage kind of,
yeah, Sage is a little
Have you-
clunky on the payroll side.
Have you signed a contract?
Oh, no, not yet. We get kickbacks. No, we have
Brian,
no
we should
contracts in
set up some
RTA.
kind of a promissory note or something.
Well, but we shouldn't be waiting long for triennial. start off, just name the projects, name and number the projects, get them on the god darn board.
Right.
And then we started putting a timeline to them.
Just
I mean,
give
this-
you progress reports.
Yeah, this is a half-day.
But the nice thing about like the bus stop designation program is the consultant's gonna be giving us progress reports.
Mhm.
I mean, that is total turnkey. And that is part of the issue, is just not having, you know, one person with their pulse on one project. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a one-to-one relationship by any stretch of the imagination, so, we'll,
There's probably
We'll
10
get you something.
projects, I'm guessing, there's about less than 10,
Right.
but I'm guessing somewhere in that neighborhood, if you were to just sit in a room with a couple of people and start identifying what they are,
yeah.
give them visibility, project visibility, give then accountability, timeline.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 procurements. And it's probably a dozen.
Yeah.
You know, a dozen, so.
So,
We'll get you some information on
Brian, do you have in your head some idea when the past will be all straightened out? So we can move forward?
that. Well,
It can't be soon enough.
I think the triennial, which happens in May, will be, I mean, that will look at 14, 15, and 16. And that will be our last look at anything that happened before my time here. Should be. And then, you know, I think that, you know, we've already kind of started to turn our heads. I mean, we've got the transit center up and running, we've got the bus stop designation project kind of, you know, it's not rolling yet, it's got to get into a grant, and we're working on a grant amendment to get approved. That's in process, but once that happens, I'm awarding it and I'm cutting them loose. And that will definitely be, you know, advancing us out of the 90s, for sure. So I think, yeah, if we get, depending on how rough triennial is, I don't really anticipate it being that rough because we're so beat down by FMO and other things that have happened, and we have enough education under our belts to kind of know what the problem areas are. Like ADA to be a problem area that, you know, it's just a work in progress that, you know, they're gonna ask us moving forward to make some fixes, and we're already sort of working on those. So I you know, it depends on how that goes, but I think end of May, we should really be able to start looking forward. We won't have any other reviews for, except I guess we'll have the state review.
You're into it again.
Well, no, that's a 3-year deal, so we had that
October
at 15.
Come around.
So next spring, we'll have the state review. But we should be rolling by then. So I think May, we can stop looking back. May 19th. It's a Friday.
It's a Friday, there you go.
May 19th is, they're here on Thursday and Friday, the 18th and 19th. And
They're only coming for 2 days?
they're only coming for 2 days. They'll be in
That's
Wilmington the
amazing.
2 days before that. And,
Good.
and yeah, I mean, you know, they want to focus on maintenance because we've had 2 triennials in a row where we had maintenance findings, and I'm not worried about maintenance. I'm really not. I think we got a handle on that, and, you know, they're not gonna kill us too much on finances because FMO has already been here. So it's gonna be on the operations side that we need to look at, so it'll be ADA, it'll be Title VI, so they'll be looking at all those. Those have all been updated here recently, so it'll be a matter of whether or not we're meeting our plan. We wrote a plan, are we following it? And so, there's some findings, but I think for the most part, we're doing pretty well.
And I'll say one more thing before we leave my page, which I appreciate. I feel like I talk too much sometimes, but I do want to say to staff here and the board that, you know, we go through all the stuff with the payroll and with, you know, lists and all those things. But the fact is that the system is really running great. I mean, that's the final line, you know, the rubber hits the road and all that. But the system is really running great. The transfer center is amazing. People are walking in there, walking up to that little hole in the glass and asking questions like, and I'm astounded, you know. I think, you know, don't you know this thing has been coming for, we've needed this thing for years and years, and they're just saying, you know, what's the next bus to Walmart, you know, like they've been doing it all the time. The buses are comfortable, the drivers are doing a great job. For years after Crypta, when the buses were, we've talked about Crypta, the buses were endlessly late. I can tell you stories about hours late. But, and even in the last couple of years, people would, the bus would be 5 minutes late and people would be saying, oh man, this bus never comes on time, they're always late, they need new buses, it's a piece of junk and all that. I just don't hear it anymore. I mean, the bus is coming. The app is out there. The buses are comfortable. I would say,
New age.
go down to the transfer center on the hour and watch these 4 buses pull up within a minute of each other. Now, in the summertime, that 7 probably going to go back to being a little bit late again. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. But all the work that, all the things we talk about, the details and all these, lots of pages and all these numbers on these things, they really translate into very good service. So, that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Do you remember that bus that Sid sent to us? That was Crypta. That colored bus
Oh, the
with the
colors
stuff on
and
the top? Because that was Crypta, because at the time Shivaloo said that's what our buses were like. In his country where he came from,
Yeah,
Nigeria.
like the jitney style buses, all the colors.
Right.
Not a whole lot to say on this page yet. I think I gotta get Michelle back in town to kind of figure out where we are on some of these other places we're going to talk. But I do have a council budget workshop coming up with the City of Myrtle Beach, mostly to talk about what we're using the $375,000 for, that type of thing. I'm not sure if that's on the 14th. I may be presenting to them at their workshop before the dedication for the transit center.
I don't want to be around when county council and city council start pissing on each other.
Yeah, that's true. I saw that article in the paper today.
If they're serious about lawsuits and
Yeah,
serious
that's
about
a shame,
withdrawing
yeah.
services,
Right.
you don't want to be in the room, talking about it.
Well, and I, the Horry County Budget Workshop is on March 23rd. I'm on the agenda. I'm right before the Economic Development Corporation. I got 30 minutes with them.
Is it morning or afternoon?
I think it's, I want to say it's at 1 o'clock, 1 or 1:30. I'll send everybody an invite to
Where?
that. I think it's at the transportation, or the
Council chambers?
committee meeting. It might be in Chambers. I'm not sure.
March 23rd?
March 23rd. They're kind of pulling back from any talk of millage or millage equivalent. But they are talking about cutting loose some additional funding, and so I'm trying to get in front of Mark to just see what their thoughts are on that. I've had conversations with Sel. We're kind of getting away from that conversation down in Georgetown County as well. Do you know when your budget workshop is? Is he?
No, I have a schedule, but I don't have it with
Right.
me.
The conversation with Sel, just verified what you told me, and he said that he was gonna get back to me and give me my time in front of council to talk about things. There is a lot of, I said a lot, but there does seem to be, we're getting a lot of requests for additional service down there and that type of thing, so that's something that we need to talk about, at least from a standpoint of working towards it, instituting those connections between like Andrews and Georgetown sort of on, during the day. And I'd like to go further down 17, like Maryville and those areas, so hopefully we can work out that.
At least to Ori Tech.
Yeah, well, there's some apartment complex, I don't remember the name of the road, but across from Horry Tech, if you take that right, you get down there, it starts with a P. Perry, or, I don't know. There's some apartment complexes and stuff down there, so we'll work on that.
We did that at one time.
I know, it's a resurrection of the old 14 route. And so, the big thing about all of these changes, even going to North Myrtle Beach or, doing service to Loris and those types of things, they're all just connections that need to be made. It's the creation of the network. It's not, And so I want to caution decision makers about being too hung up about the ridership. You know, it's just, these are places that we need to get people who need the service to, or from. And so, you know, as we discussed in our retreat, you know, it's a $5 million a year proposition to double the system, or $3 to $5 million. And that, you know, and that money's not coming from the feds or the state, so we gotta figure out a way locally to generate that. I had a really good conversation with Brad Dean and Stephen Green, the Chamber and Hospitality Association, and they have pledged to get us in front of the resort folks to try to get, I've asked for $25,000 for the entertainment shuttle, and it's basically prepaid fare for, you know, sponsored by the Hospitality Association or whomever. They like the sell. We gave them our data on, you know, thank you for the data you did on the entertainment shuttle surveys. I think it's a pretty good case for, you guys want this, and you don't want it to be fair. You want it to be fare free. And, you know, if we need to modify the routing a little bit, or, you know, those types of things, we can. So we're gonna have our day in court with those folks. We know Ripley's is interested in helping us financially, so then, you know, it's one of those things where if we get a seed money towards that 25, that we might be able to
I
get
was
there.
in Charleston last month, their entertainment equipment, they actually, on the side of it, free shuttle.
Right.
Big
Right.
block letters.
Well, Ripley's is the #1 cited direction.
Yeah, and that's where people are going, between those two locations, yeah.
So, you know, if we can strike a separate deal with them that involves some free signage or something like that, you know, to get some of that.
Well, we're opening up. I mean, this conversation has to take place in March, so we're ready for it this summer. I had some really good conversations with them and some others about, you know, how much service do we need in the shoulder seasons and those types of things. And I know Ripley's would like shoulder season service, but I think most of the resorts are like, well, you know, maybe a couple weekends, or like doing spring break week, or over the holidays, you know, those type, you know, over Christmas break. And so we're gonna sort of put those on the back burner right now and just focus on summertime and do the full court press on where they can advertise. They can advertise in the vehicle. We're gonna open up advertising on that gummed pad, you know, on the little map that we did, and just start, you know, making it more of a revenue generating type of thing, short of the fair. So hopefully that will be successful, but we're gonna do a tour. We're gonna take a bus out there and get as many resort owners out there as we can to try to build some interest.
At Christmas, something should be done at Christmas. This past Christmas, my family was down, we took a carload, and I think it was $15 for the carload, through the sports center in North Myrtle Beach, out on 22. That was wonderful.
Okay.
And then they went all around, and then they sold marshmallows, and they cooked marshmallows, the kids, and then they had Santa, talk to Santa, and they had everything going. They had an ice skating rink. It was really, it was worth every penny of it, and I enjoyed it very much.
We're gonna get out there and at least, I'm gonna offer up a study to look at some routing. I know that may have been done in the past, but, you know, we need to really think about where service you know, where we dip our toe in the water in North Myrtle Beach. I kind of side on a shuttle type of service, you know, that's getting you from downtown out to Barefoot Landing, and, you know, something similar to the entertainment shuttle is the first step.
Like they used to have, we used to have that, right.
So we'll go have that conversation, and I know they got so many things on their plate.
I don't think she's running for, someone told me she's not running again, but they told me that before. I think she's finished this year, isn't she?
I don't know.
I think so.
You know, but along those lines of conversations, the one with the city I thought was very interesting. In addition to the additional funding that I've asked for, had a really good conversation with Fox and John Peterson about, you know, the super block and getting Coast RTA involved in that conversation. I was like, look, if that development is really going to happen, that's where our transit center needs to be. And, you know, if you're talking about a bus transit center, you want to fit that into a development that's already happening. That's not a catalyst. That's not where the development's going to happen because you got a bus system there. But I said, we can also resurrect some of those discussions about connecting that center to Ocean Boulevard, whether that was even a steel wheel trolley or, you know, something really, you know, much sexier than what we have. And that can be a catalyst for development. So, you know, I just said, look, get me involved in those conversations. You know, there's a lot of options there that we can, you know, we can kind of move forward on. You know, some of which are, you know, eminently fundable, you know, depending on property values and those types of things. I had a very similar conversation with Adam Emmerich over here in Conway. You know, they're looking at sort of development of the riverfront, putting in a hotel. There's some apartments that are being developed up there, and I said, look, you know, we're hoping to move our operation out of Conway, but I don't want to lose, you know, my foothold in Conway. So it makes sense to put a transit center there, and we ought to place it near the rail somewhere. You know, if we're looking really looking forward, and you know, I think they appreciated those comments and have, you know, gotten us involved in their development process over there. I think it's, you know, small now. One of the other funny things that they were talking about was possibly, you know, they were talking about a bike path development. There's a bike path, I guess, that they want to connect that connects the university with Busby Lake, you know, the path around Busby Lake, and not having that connection over the river. And there's a bike ferry in Vermont that they like the idea of running a ferry across the river. And I said, well, we're not, no, I don't know about a ferry, but we've had a bad luck with that.
That's what we ought to get involved in again.
But it is fundable under RTA, and we can talk, so it was pretty interesting. Yes. I bet you'll have a good one, so, you know, those, I still have to go talk to Conway City Council. I'm not gonna ask them for $50,000. We'll see where we get on that, but I don't want it to be a tax. It needs to be something that we can spend the money on anything. And I know the mayor's on board, so we just gotta work on others. And they're in the process of hiring a new city manager.
Again?
But they're not again, they've been a long time.
Well, not too long, because they used to have the guy that we have in North Grove Beach.
I'm almost done.
Thomas.
Any questions about funding discussions or anything?
It's my list of the projects that
Oh,
I'm
boy.
aware of.
We have disposed of 6 vehicles here recently. If you walk out back, you'll see a lot more pavement, thankfully. We've still got 3 more that are in the process of being disposed. We're tracking down titles and stuff for those 3. We have disposed of the shop equipment out back, which is nice. And I have.
Who got it? The fireplace did it.
I don't know who got it.
Yeah.
But we recouped $3,800 on basically $10,000 worth of equipment.
No.
So I got a $7,000 loss there, but
Good. No.
that's not bad. And the total of all these disposals, none of the buses went for more than $5,000, nor were they valued for more than $5,000. So that's money we can keep. And so all told, we got $13,406. So it's basically a wash for that all of that. So and it's cleaned out back to where we can put in our lift when we get that procured for working on the vans, working on the cutaways.
Would you add lifts to my list of projects there?
So we got rid of the shop equipment. I have engaged McNair on getting us start our letter writing tour on the Navistar Internationals so that we can get some movement on that before Triennial gets here. I have 2 DART buses out there that are, one is very close to being put back on the road with a full engine replacement, and another one that's, I don't think it's going to be a full engine replacement, but we're doing some pretty hefty work on the engine. Once they get back on the road, all 10 will be rolling.
Wow.
And we've made the decision, the command decision that we're not going to put any more money into the Gillicks. Those are the Richmond buses, the white milk trucks. We had one basically, transmission basically fell out of it. So we're not spending any more money on So they'll be parked over the course of the next 3 or 4 months. And obviously they're being replaced by the new buses. So we're it's just one of the ways we're trying to curb maintenance costs, is we're just not gonna put any more money
And
into
as we
buses.
park them, does that mean we're on the road to get rid of them? Is that-
Yes, they will be disposed of when these new ones get here.
What is the status of paint/signage? Last I heard, you were going off to the legislators' reception.
Yes,
I think I heard just go ahead and do it.
I think we're gonna stand down on that whole process. I don't think it's really worth the political capital at this point. My lawyer says that even our DART buses are compliant with the law, so if someone wants to give us a ticket, we have legal wherewithal to fight it.
So are we gearing up to get common looking?
Yes, and they will have less yellow, but still a lot of yellow.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really excited about unveiling the paint scheme on the new buses, but I'm gonna let it be a surprise.
You're not gonna tell us, but you
I'm
don't
not
wanna
gonna
hear
tell
what
you,
we're
I'm
gonna
not
say.
gonna tell you about it. Despite the fact that it's
We
not,
got rid
it's
of
not
navy
Mr.
blue.
Wilson's colors.
I like Bernie's comment about it looks scary.
I thought-
Yeah, well, we've gotten away from the striped,
You could
Yeah,
see it, you could see
the
that dark
leopard
color in
look.
the snow,
But-
you could see the bus coming in the snow,
we
if
will,
we had snow.
in concert with those buses arriving with their new paint scheme, we will be making some modifications to our logo. And it'll be a whole new brand.
What's the
Good.
timeframe for that?
Well, they get here in July.
So we have to put it on everything.
So we'll be doing new letterhead, we'll be doing all sorts of interesting
What
stuff.
t-shirts?
with our
New
New
shirts?
New thing?
yes.
Now, the 10 DART buses,
I have-
it's about
I have
$100,000
t-shirts
to
over that
convert them to
description.
the new paint scheme.
Yep,
I have
and we'll
a
just
big
do those
sheet, I
over
have a
time. I
limo.
don't know that we'll do them all in one fell
Who wears
swoop,
them when we
but
go on trips?
it's, the paint scheme that we've chosen, I think, is a little less cumbersome than the ones that you all saw. We are doing, it's basic blue and yellow, and there'll be decals, for the new logos and stuff like that. So it'll be a nice clean look.
July.
And it'll
Summer
be
project.
beachier. Get that.
Beach.
Good,
Good.
good
Be
beach
beachy.
here, yeah, it should be, so we're beach.
So I'm really looking forward to it.
How long are we talking about running the Dallas buses? I mean, we'll put this money into this paint scheme. We talking 5 years, 3 to 5 years, somewhere in that range?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, because that is a significant investment in them.
Well, and we're still working through some of the details on how we might want to change how the cutaways are painted
Oh,
and those types of things, but those will be done as we do replacements. We're not gonna repaint those.
Is that Michelle calling you in that?
It's been a team effort. Tom has been working with the manufacturer on it. And Michelle, we have a consultant that's helping us deal with the logo. The logo electronic files are a mess. There's not really any one that can sort of be resurrected and rebuilt. We're gonna remove some of the colors. There's 6 colors in that thing, which is very unworkable.
Yeah.
It doesn't print out in black and white very well, so we're gonna fix all that. And it's gonna be a modest change. It's not a huge change, because that's one of the things that I've always liked about the agency was the logo, so.
Yeah.
But it'll be, you'll see how it ties together, and I don't wanna say any more. So it's good, it'll be fun.
Make that a hidden project on the
It's,
list.
Yes.
yeah.
Just
He doesn't
voting,
wanna hear from us yet.
just voting the Marlin on getting those buses here will be the big thing.
I'm glad you pressed on with that paint scheme, because you get 10 different opinions. I was reading all that stuff. I mean, I don't think Ivory liked anything.
It's
Bernie
not my
was scared.
colors, but I won't
And
comment. It's
you
like,
were
well,
never-
not my colors is a comment.
You're
Yeah.
gonna-
Well, of course it wasn't.
Yeah, so, we'll see.
Oh.
One of them was so bright, it looked like Donald Trump's hair. I mean, it was just.
Well, I
he's
think
toning it down.
that
He's
the
going
feedback
more
that I
white
got from
now.
y'all helped us kind of rein it in. And you will see the logic. It works for all our bus types, which was a key
Yeah.
situation.
Right.
It's keeping with the yellow theme. That's sort of been a rebirth for us anyway.
Did you turn it over to the comic book guy?
and it's,
Oh,
no,
that
no,
comic
it's,
book is
you
wonderful.
like
Yeah, like-
I finally gave it to my husband. I didn't even read it, and I read it, and I gave it to him. You know, because he was a teacher of
Mhm.
10-year-olds, and he thought this was wonderful.
we'll be handing those out at Customer Appreciation Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be cool.
What's the timeline that we will get to find out about the logo and the scheme? What's our time?
So the buses arrive in July.
So
You'll see it.
so
So
that's-
you see when
That's
they
when
pull
we
the
will
cover off.
unveil
all
it.
right. I won't be there.
Well, I hope we're going to have a big production. Cameras,
Yeah, we'll try.
Why
To
not?
get the press there.
Why
It'll be
not?
the first full-size buses purchased
Absolutely. Good
in a
publicity.
very long time.
New bus
The
purchase, that's true.
Well, I don't really consider those are medium duty even.
Really?
I guess really the last one was the Eldorados, the Patriots Point bus and the Wonderworks bus. Those are 35 footers. And those were purchased.
what is that sign outside?
Just an internal joke between Erica and Doug about Patriots fans only. We're busting the Broncos fans.
Oh, are they?
Chops. So, policies, I'll try to go through this quickly. There are a number of policies that have been approved over the years that I don't feel like we need because they relate directly to federal requirements that we have to follow anyway. So you were gonna see, we're gonna redo all the policies, so there'll be a board meeting where maybe we put them on consent agenda or something, but, and I'm hopeful that we'll discuss them in committee and then do a consent agenda for the meeting, so we're not spending too much time. But basically, the finance ones, which are the most important, will have a travel/credit card policy. I'm gonna ask for sort of my line of credit option if we need cash flow issues, so I don't have to come back to you every time we do it. And we have the budget revision, which I don't really see any changes necessarily for that one. That's it from finance side, from the board's, board approval perspective. Under operations, you have those four, the top three, ADA, Title VI, and environmental justice. We already have in place, you've seen them, you've approved them. We're gonna work towards a service standards, and that is, I'm just starting to think of the ones like for MARTA, if a certain bus gets over a certain capacity, that they automatically put additional service in. Some of those are gonna be a little bit problematic for us because we don't have the funding to do it necessarily. But that's the type of service standard that document will need to have. And I don't see that being in this first round of approval. I mean, that's something that we're gonna work on maybe leading up to triennial. So it'll be later on in the spring when I actually ask you guys to endorse that. The maintenance plan procedures, those are all procedures that are all governed by federal guidelines, and I don't see any policies for maintenance coming out of the board. And then you have HR and marketing. We're gonna redo the advertising policy. So we're gonna get you all to weigh in on, what types of advertising we'll accept on our buses and things like that, so that you all kinda have an understanding, there's political campaign, there's a bunch of laundry, we're not doing alcohol ads, cigarette ads.
Selling your blood ads.
Yeah, those we're doing, but you can weigh in on it. If you don't think we should be doing that, then I would like you all to weigh in on that. And then we gotta work on a planned budget. Now, whether or not that's a policy or not, I'm not sure, but it relates to money that we're taking in on that side of the house. Advertising funding is intended to pay for our marketing, because a lot of that is off, it's not reimbursable. But I see us being able to recoup revenues, and I think you asked the question about it. It's like, if we make too much money, where does that money go? And so that's what that policy will kind of hash out as it relates to all our marketing goals and that plan, which is still in draft form, even though we've started working on some of that. And then you all see the EEO policy and our employee manual, so you'll be giving us endorsements of those. And that's it. So I think the total number of policies that the board actually approves goes from, I don't think I actually counted, it's over 20, down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's a big time consolidation process going on with this effort. And then, the procedures are there's a ton of them. And we'll fill you in on what procedures fall under each of these policies. And the biggest thing is working out a system where, I'm trying to think of a good, under operations, we have reporting requirements, where that fits into the financial procedure that it's feeding. And so we're working out that nomenclature so that you're not rewriting a procedure in ops that it actually falls under finance, those types of things. Because there's all sorts of, that's what the arrows are for, is just there's all sorts of interactions between departments. And so we're just trying to lay all that out. And we've got, this is what it looks like right now. It's two-sided ledger sheet, and it's a big old flow chart. And we're working on, everybody, each department's working on their own set.
Good.
And that concludes the manager's report. Hopefully that was enough.
We have nothing to vote on today.
We don't have nothing to vote on.
Nope.
And we don't need an executive session?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll let the board know that my executive physical is in process and we'll have results by the end of March.
If you keep losing weight before you go into that, it's gonna be false advertising.
My EKG looked good,
Yeah.
so we're getting there.
Okay, do we have any old business?
Wake up everybody.
Any new
We're
business?
lucky we hired someone, yes, we're lucky we hired someone like him, because he takes all our nonsense, he has a good sense of humor.
He does.
Yeah.
Does a very good job there.
He works hard at
A
it.
lot going on.
He does.
Everybody, I mean, I tell you, staff is pumping. Everybody is busy, so it's,
Ernie, did you want an
It's good.
executive session?
No, I have an announcement to make though.
Oh, you do?
We have announcements?
Yes.
Right there. Are we there?
We're there. Yeah, we're there.
The Department of Justice letter that the EEOC gave Mr. Rollins was December 2nd, the 90th day, he gets 90 days to make another suit, is up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I've been checking the public index, I've seen nothing yet. If you want to check that, if I see something, I'll send a link to the whole board.
Yeah.
But Horry County Public, 15th Circuit Public Index, I think.
If my name's on it, don't bother
You
sending
know,
it.
I read that, I gotta go in.
just careful, y'all, this is legal matter, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I read that DOJ letter, and, okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
So it expires tomorrow.
It expires tomorrow.
So you headed home, you wanna ride home? You going home?
No, I'm going to the doctor, I sprained my ankle, braces.
You're limping nicely.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I'm limping, yeah, usually.
You wanna ride to the doctor?
You have another announcement? I have an announcement. I had this pilot fashion show. We had 281 tickets sold, 281 tickets there at the Dunes Club. And I did a 1.5 page advertisement in the North Myrtle Beach Times. Do an article on you.
Good. Wow.
Because whatever I write, they print.
Yeah.
I think we have some.
Is that a good thing?
Well, she says to me all the time, whatever I can do for you, I'll do it, so.
We have some Girl Scout cookies also.
uh,
Got any thin mints?
I do. Good stuff.
Oh, they're here.
I do. I do. They're not in the room, but
I gotta go in a minute.
they're $4 a bunch.
He's been doing
I'm running
skating
low.
business all week.
So
I just had a
the
kid
gutters
around
run
my
every
house.
time
I
I sell
told
them.
Lou always, he won't say no to anybody. He says, my wife will give you the check.
He gets the cookies and you.
I think we're
'Cause I
ready
don't know.
for a
We are ready for adjournment.
motion.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
All in second?
What are you spending $4 on?
Any
Girl Scout
Cookie, Girl Scout cookie.
I'm not gonna give you this.
discussion about the matter? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay.
Oh, yes.
You would have wanted to stay here longer.
We have adjourned.
Let me go get your box.
11:25.
This here or take this home, I can't remember.
Leave it and I'll put it in your notebook.
Okay.
You don't have, you don't have thin mints, I'll take anything out.